Hello again, this is Dusty Smith, Wild Custom Saddles and Trees. And today I'd like to mark out a fork. Typically what happens is you get a saddle maker, some saddle makers that call in and they give you the dimensions for what they want their tree to essentially be. A lot of the times it is gullet height and gullet width. There's little known, sometimes it feels, about handhold width. That is essentially how we're going to measure out our trees here and then set the appropriate angle that our bars are going to be at. Again, when I get an order in, it seems like you say, okay, well, what do you want? I want a wade. Okay, what handhold width do you want? And there's kind of a blank moment of I don't know what that means. So that's why we're making this video today, trying to get a little more information out there for the saddle makers to order a tree and understand some of these measurements. So we're going to mark out a wade tree here that I've got. This is a fork that's kind of all glued up. And essentially we're going to mark it out. If you can kind of see some faint lines, I tried to make a video earlier and it cut it short. So I'm making another one, so I had to do some erasing and we'll go from there. First off, I never use black marker, but for the video, I felt that we probably need to do that so you guys can see. And as we mark this out, you're going to start seeing the fork kind of develop. So again, first off, we're going to do our handhold width. There can be lots of variations with this, but this order that I have calls for a 4-inch handhold width and 90-degree bars. Very typical dimensions there for a tree. That's kind of, I bet 90% of what I get orders for is a 4x90. That's what 4-inch handhold, 90-degree bars. So again, we're going to start setting this thing up for you. So what I've got is a T-square. Ron Denise Nickel actually designed this up, had these things made. Makes my life pretty dang easy, really, because all I have to do is line it up on the center line. I'm going to go ahead and measure over 2 inches from center on this side, 2 inches from center on this side. There is our 4-inch handhold. At this point in time, now I'm going to set up the bar angle. You hear a lot of 90, 93-degree bar angles. We can do whatever you want, but in the long run of things, they don't vary that much. What we go ahead and do is I've got a digital protractor here. I'm going to go ahead and set this thing up to 90 degrees, which what the order calls for. And it might take me just a second to get this thing fiddled in here. And here we go. We're going to lock it down. Now I'm going to set this thing up so it measures from this distance and this distance the same on both sides and hit my tick marks, and that it measures up on the center there. So I go ahead and just kind of start fiddling with it. Looks pretty good there. I go ahead and mark this out, make sure it runs through my tick mark there, and make sure it runs down my tick mark there. On this case, this tree, this is a 90-degree bar. If I wanted it to be 93, I'm going to set it up. Well, look at that. I hit it right off the bat. I'm going to set this thing up, and that is my 93. Now I'm going to make just a little bit of a mark down here, but imagine that it goes up into the center line. That's how much difference there is between a 90 and a 93. A little over 1/8 of an inch. Not a lot of difference. Granted, as you expand it down, it's going to grow a little bit. But there we go. So at this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and get my handhold kind of device here and mark out my handhold gullet area on this. So I go ahead, make sure it lines up to that tick and how high I want my handhold. Get it on this side. Now it's starting to kind of come together. If you can imagine, this is the back of the fork. This is the handhold area that you grab your hand in if you want it. So I'm going to make a few other quick measurements here. It's going to go by fairly simple and quick, but just bear with me. we'll get it all together here. So just a few different things that I'm measuring down to set up my pattern. And again, I'm going to write 4 by 90 degrees right on here so I don't mess it up as I go through. So now what I do is, this is my 8-inch wade, which the order calls for. I go from 7 all the way up to 10, you know, so it's whatever you guys want. Right off the bat, when I was learning from Ron and Denise, they told me patterns are suggestions. So this pattern isn't going to fit my 93 degree perfectly and everything else. So what I do is I typically just line up the center line, and I've kind of got reference marks that I follow as this thing all comes together. And that way, whenever somebody orders another 8-inch wade, they're typically the same. So that mark, and then I'm going to flop it over and do the same thing. Again, I've got my little method to my madness here, so this is what I do every single time, just so I know they're very consistent back and forth. And there, those are the swells. Now this is going to be the horn. I've measured over just slightly narrower than what the order calls for, because I've got to still put a horn cap on this, but this is for the initial cutout, and so these things are just drawn on here, no big deal, as you go. And there we go. That is the fork that is set up. Again, this is a 4-inch handhold. That's how tree makers measure the distance here, not the distance of the gullet width. And then this is what sets up our bars to be 90 or 93 or whatever degree. I mean, if you want to get carried away, you can go by half a degrees if you want, but that's insane, I think. So, again, 4-inch handhold, 90 degree bars. This is going to give me typically about a 6.5-inch gullet on most of my trees, but again, stalk thickness makes that vary a lot. So that's a very inconsistent measurement we don't like to use. So again, if this is still confusing, call me, email me, like me on Facebook, whatever, we can talk about it so you guys can kind of get a grasp on this, and we can kind of get some of this stuff taken care of. Again, this is Dusty Smith, YO Custom Saddles and Trees. Like us on Facebook. Our Facebook page is YO Custom Saddles and Trees, or our internet website, which is www.yosaddlesandtrees. That's WYO saddlesandtrees.com. Again, thanks for watching.